The stars burned with the light of dying ships. High Commander Velrose stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternity's Light. His forearms gripped the command rail so tight that his blue skin turned pale. Around him, officers from a dozen different species screamed orders and warnings. But Velrose heard nothing. He could only watch. 10,000 warships. The greatest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 47 different worlds, carrying the hopes of billions of lives. And now, those ships were dying. The Dominion had come. On the viewing screen, Velrose watched a carrier from the Moth People explode in a ball of fire. 3 cruisers from the Rock World tried to escape, but silver beams cut them apart like paper. A hospital ship, marked with the signs of peace in every known language, was torn in half by a Dominion destroyer. High Commander Ambassador Kira called from her station. Her insect wings buzzed with fear. "We have lost contact with the Third Fleet. The Fifth Fleet is requesting permission to retreat." "There is nowhere to retreat to," Velrose said. His voice was hollow. This was supposed to be their final stand. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon the Galactic Alliance owned was here at Vethera. They had planned for years. They had trained their crews. They had built new weapons and new shields. They believed they could win. They were wrong. The Dominion was not a species. It was a machine, a cold and terrible intelligence that had eaten its way across the galaxy for 1,000 years. It did not want peace. It did not want trade. It did not want anything except to grow, to consume, to destroy everything that was not itself. And now it was winning. "The Dominion flagship is targeting us," an officer shouted. "Impact in 30 seconds. Velrose closed his eyes. So this was how it ended. Not with glory, but with fire. The ship shook hard. Velrose fell to the floor. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled the air. But when he opened his eyes, he was still alive. "General Othrin's ship took the hit for us," Kira said. Her voice was shaking. "His vessel is destroyed, but he saved us." Velrose pushed himself up. Around him, the bridge was chaos. Half the crew was injured. The viewing screen was cracked. But the ship still flew. "Send the order," Velrose said. "All ships retreat. Scatter in every direction. We cannot win this battle, but High Commander, if we scatter, we may never find each other again. If we stay, we die," Velrose replied. "At least some of us may survive. Send the order." The retreat was a disaster. The Dominion hunted them through the stars. Ships that tried to run were caught and destroyed. Ships that tried to hide were found and killed. Of the 10,000 vessels that had come to Vethera, less than 2,000 escaped. 3 days later, the survivors gathered at a hidden station called Haven's Rest. It was an old mining platform, forgotten by most of the galaxy. Now it was the last home of the Galactic Alliance. Velrose walked through the halls of the station. Everywhere he looked, he saw pain. Wounded soldiers lay on the floor because there were not enough beds. Children cried for parents who would never come back. Elderly aliens stared at walls with empty eyes. Their home worlds now under Dominion control in the command center. What remained of the Alliance leadership gathered around a broken table. There was General Athron, who had somehow survived the destruction of his ship. There was Ambassador Kira, still trying to send messages to any world that might help. There were admirals and generals from a dozen species, all of them defeated, all of them lost. "We have counted our losses," Kira reported. Her voice was tired. 8,000 ships destroyed, 12 billion lives lost, 3 species completely wiped out. The Dominion now controls 70% of known space. "And they will not stop," Athrin said. The reptilian general's scales were burned and scarred from his escape. "They never stop. They will find us here. They will kill us all. Then we must find help," Velrose said. "From where?" Othrin laughed bitterly. "Every strong species is already part of the Alliance. Everyone else is too weak or too far away. I have been sending signals," Kira said slowly, "to every world, every species, every corner of the galaxy. Most channels returned nothing. But one world answered. Which world? A small planet in a forgotten arm of the galaxy. The locals call it Earth. The species calls itself human. A Thrawn made a sound of disgust. I know of them. They are barely spacefaring. Their technology is primitive. They still use chemical rockets and nuclear power. They would be useless. They offered to help, Kira said. Help. A Thrawn slammed his fist on the table. What help can such creatures offer? They have no fleet. They have no army. They have nothing. Velros was silent for a long moment. He thought of the burning ships. He thought of the dead. He thought of the Dominion, coming closer every day. Tell them to come, he finally said. High Commander, this is foolish. But we have no other choice. Tell them to come. 1 week later, a single ship emerged from hyperspace near Haven's Rest. It was small, barely the size of a shuttle. Its hull was covered in patches and burns. Its engines coughed smoke. It looked like it might fall apart at any moment. Every sensor on the station locked onto it. 1,000 eyes watched. 1,000 hearts wondered. Then a voice came through the communication system. It was calm, steady, almost bored. This is Captain Dojan of the human vessel Aegis. We heard you needed help. Where do you want us? A Thrawn laughed out loud. This is our savior? One tiny ship and its foolish captain? But Velros did not laugh. He stared at the small ship on the screen. And somewhere deep inside, in a place he did not understand, he felt something he had not felt since the battle at Vethera. He felt hope. The humans came off their ship in a single line. There were only 200 of them. Thousands of aliens gathered in the docking bay to watch. Some were curious. Most were disappointed. A few were already laughing. Captain Doyan walked at the front of the line. He was not tall. He was not wide. He had no claws, no fangs, no scales, no natural armor of any kind. His skin was soft and brown. His hair was black and short. He wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. Behind him came his crew. Lieutenant Yuna walked with her head high, her eyes sharp and watching everything. Sergeant Minho was the largest of the humans, but even he was smaller than most alien soldiers. Engineer Hannah carried a bag of tools over her shoulder. Manetic Taiho had a red cross on his arm and kind eyes that looked very tired. General Othron pushed through the crowd. He towered over the humans, his green scales shining under the station lights. His mouth was full of teeth, each one as long as a human finger. So these are our saviors, Athrin said loudly. He wanted everyone to hear. These soft, small, weak creatures. Look at them. They have no weapons on their bodies. No poison, no shells. A child from my world could kill 10 of them. Some aliens laughed. Others nodded in agreement. Duhian did not react. He simply looked up at the general and said, You must be General Othrin. I have heard of you. And I have heard of humans, Othrin replied. You fight each other over dirt and water. You have not even conquered your own moon. What could you possibly offer us? We came to help, Doyan said. That is what we offer. Help. Othrin laughed again. Go home, little creature. This is a real war. You would only get in the way. Doyan did not argue. He simply asked to see the battle data from Vethera. High Commander Velros granted his request. Most of the Alliance thought it was a waste of time. For 3 days, the humans worked. They did not eat much. They did not sleep at all. They locked themselves in a small room and studied everything the Alliance knew about the Dominion. Lieutenant Yuna watched the battle recordings over and over again. She wrote notes on paper, something the aliens found strange. Engineer Hannah took apart pieces of captured Dominion technology. She burned her fingers many times but did not stop. Manek Taiho studied reports on Dominion weapons and what they did to organic bodies. Sergeant Minho read about every ground battle, every invasion, every defeat. And Captain Doyan watched it all. He said very little. He just watched and thought. On the 3rd day, Doyan requested a meeting with the Alliance leadership. The War Council gathered in the main hall. Every important officer was there. Velros sat at the head of the table. Atherin stood with his arms crossed, ready to mock whatever the human had to say. Doyen walked to the center of the room. He looked even smaller, surrounded by so many large aliens, but his voice was calm and clear. "The Dominion is very powerful," he began, "but it has a weakness." Athron snorted. "We have fought them for 50 years. There is no weakness." "There is," Doyen said. "Your weapons are all energy-based. Lasers, plasma, particle beams. The Dominion's shields are designed to absorb energy. The more you shoot, the stronger their shields become." "We know this," Velros said. "We have tried everything. Nothing works. Have you tried hitting them with a rock?" The room went silent. Then Athron burst out laughing. Other aliens joined him. The sound filled the hall. Arakathron said between laughs. "He wants to fight the Dominion with rocks." "Not exactly," Doyen continued. He did not seem bothered by the laughter. "Humans use kinetic weapons, projectiles, bullets, missiles, physical objects moving very fast. The Dominion's shields are not designed for physical impact. Their adaptive systems have a delay of 0.3 seconds when facing something completely new." The laughter slowly died down. Some aliens looked confused. Others looked thoughtful. "We also use nuclear weapons," Doyen said. "Explosions, fire, heat, things that cannot be absorbed by an energy shield. Things that destroy by force, not by frequency." "This is theory," Atherin said, but his voice was less certain now. "You have never tested it. Then let us test it." Before anyone could respond, an alarm began to scream. Red lights flashed across the station. An officer rushed into the room. "Hi, Commander. We have detected Dominion ships." "A scout fleet. 12 vessels. They will reach the station in 2 hours." Panic spread through the room. Officers began shouting. Some called for evacuation. Others called for surrender. "We cannot fight 12 ships," Velros said. "We have nothing left that can stop them." "I can stop them," Doyen said. The room went quiet again. "With what?" Atherin demanded. "Your one little ship." "Yes, that is suicide." Doyen smiled. It was a strange smile. Not happy, but not sad either. "Maybe, but if I am right, we win. If I am wrong, you only lose 1 ship and 200 humans. That is a good trade." Velros stared at the human captain. He saw no fear in those dark eyes, no doubt. Only certainty. "Very well," Velros said. "You have permission to engage." Doyen nodded once. He turned to leave. Captain Velros called after him. "Good luck." Doyen looked back over his shoulder. "We do not need luck, High Commander. We are humans. We make our own luck." Then he was gone, walking toward the docking bay where his small broken ship waited. Atherin shook his head. "We will never see them again." Ambassador Kira watched the human leave. Something about the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he never showed fear even when he should have been terrified, made her feel strange. "Think," she said slowly, "that we have not understood these creatures at all." Thrawn laughed. "What is there to understand? They are weak. They will die." But Kira did not laugh. She had seen something in Doyen's eyes, something she could not name, and she wondered if perhaps the general was very, very wrong. The Aegis flew alone into the darkness of space behind it. The station haven's rest grew smaller and smaller until it was just another dot of light among the stars. Ahead, 12 Dominion warships waited like silver monsters, their hulls shining with cold metal and colder purpose. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Doyen sat in his command chair. The chair was old, and the leather was cracking, but it fit him perfectly. Around him, his small crew worked at their stations. No one spoke. No one needed to. Lieutenant Yuna checked her weapons console. Her fingers moved fast, testing every system, every missile, every gun. She had stripped out all the automatic targeting computers. Now everything was manual. Everything depended on human hands and human eyes. "Weapons ready, Captain," she reported. Engineer Hannah looked up from her station. She had not slept in 4 days. Dark circles hung under her eyes, but her voice was steady, engines at full power. I have overloaded the reactors by 30%. They might explode. They might not. Good enough, Do-yeon said. Sergeant Minho stood by the airlock with 20 soldiers. They wore heavy suits and carried weapons that looked old and brutal. No elegant laser rifles for them. Just metal and gunpowder and sharp edges. Boarding team ready, Minho said. His voice was deep and calm. We go in hard and fast. Kill everything that moves. Medic Taiho moved between the soldiers, checking their suits, their supplies, their hearts. He touched each one on the shoulder. A small blessing from a man who had seen too much death. On the station, every alien watched their sensors. The Aegis looked so small. The Dominion fleet looked so large. It was like watching an insect fly toward a fire. They are insane, Othrin said. Completely insane. Belrose said nothing. He just watched. The Dominion ships detected the Aegis, their weapons charged. Silver light gathered at the ends of their cannons, ready to erase the tiny human ship from existence. Then Do-yeon gave his order. Yuna, kill them. The Aegis did not fly straight. It did not fly in patterns. It moved like a wild animal, spinning and diving and rising, without any logic that a computer could follow. The Dominion weapons fired, beam after beam of deadly light. But they hit nothing but empty space. Yuna fired back. The first missile was small, barely visible against the stars. It flew toward the lead Dominion ship and hit its shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the nuclear warhead exploded. Fire bloomed in space, white and terrible. The Dominion ship's energy shield, designed to absorb lasers and plasma, could not understand physical force, could not adapt to pure destruction. The shield flickered once and died. Yuna fired again. 3 more missiles, straight into the unprotected hull. The Dominion ship exploded. On the station, aliens screamed in shock. Some covered their eyes. Some cheered without thinking. 1 ship down. 11 to go. The Dominion fleet reacted. Their computers tried to adapt, tried to understand this new threat. But humans did not fight like algorithms. They fought like predators. They fought like prey. They fought like everything that had ever lived and died on their terrible, beautiful planet. Hannah pushed the engines harder. The ship shook and groaned. Warning lights flashed everywhere. She ignored them all. Yuna did not stop firing. Missiles, bullets, anything that could fly and explode and kill. 2 more Dominion ships fell. The remaining 9 ships changed formation. They tried to surround the Aegis, tried to trap it. Do-yeon smiled. Minho, your turn. The Aegis flew straight toward the nearest Dominion ship. It did not slow down. At the last second, it turned hard, scraping against the enemy hull. Magnetic clamps fired. The ship locked on. Minho and his team blasted through the airlock, inside the Dominion vessel. Everything was metal and wire and cold blue light. Machine creatures moved through the corridors, half organic and half mechanical. They were designed to be perfect soldiers. Stronger than any natural being. Faster than any natural being. Impossible to stop. They had never met humans. Minho fired his shotgun. The blast tore through a Dominion drone, scattering pieces of metal and flesh across the walls. His soldiers followed, shooting and stabbing and fighting with a fury that the machines could not process. 1 soldier took a hit and fell. Taiho was there in seconds, dragging him behind cover, stopping the bleeding with one hand while shooting with the other. The wounded man got up. He kept fighting. A Dominion unit grabbed Minho from behind. Metal claws dug into his armor. Minho headbutted the thing so hard that its sensors cracked. Then he pulled out a knife and stabbed it through what might have been its brain. The machines learned. They adapted. They got harder to kill, so the humans got more creative. 1 soldier used a broken pipe as a club. Another set fire to a corridor and pushed drones into the flames. Minho ripped the arm off a destroyed machine and used it as a weapon. They were bleeding. They were tired. They should have been dead 10 times over. They kept fighting. Outside, Yuna had destroyed 4 more ships. Only 5 remained. But the Aegis was damaged now. Holes in the hull. 1 engine dead. Smoke and fire filling the corridors. Hannah worked with burned hands. Rerouting power, sealing breaches, keeping them alive by will alone. Minho's team reached the core of the Dominion vessel. They planted explosives. They ran. The ship exploded behind them. They barely made it back to the Aegis. 4 Dominion ships left. Yuna killed 2 more with the last of their missiles. The final 2 tried to run. Doyon did not let them. Ram them, he ordered. The Aegis chased the fleeing ships. It caught the first one and crashed into it, hull against hull. Both ships spun wildly. Yuna fired point blank with the remaining guns. The enemy ship broke apart. 1 left. It was running as fast as it could. Almost out of range, Hannah looked at her console. They had nothing left. No missiles. No bullets. 1 engine. Half a hull. Then she smiled.
Captain.
I can overload the reactor. Use it as a bomb. Do it. They caught the last Dominion ship. Hannah ejected the reactor core. It flew through space and hit the enemy vessel. The explosion lit up the stars. The Aegis drifted, broken and burning, but alive. Doyon opened communications. His voice was tired but clear. This is Captain Dojan of the human vessel Aegis. Scout fleet eliminated. Casualties, 7 wounded, 0 dead. Requesting permission to return and reload ammunition. On the station, no one spoke. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Velrose began to laugh. It was not a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had just seen the impossible. Athron stared at his screens. His mouth hung open. His hands shook. What are they? He whispered. What are these creatures? Ambassador Kira watched the burning human ship drift toward them. She thought of the word they had used. Humans. Such a simple word for such terrifying beings. The galaxy would never be the same. Words spread through the galaxy like fire. 200 humans. 1 broken ship. 12 Dominion warships destroyed. 0 deaths. On Haven's Rest, aliens who had laughed at the humans now stood in line to speak with them. Generals who had mocked them now asked to learn their secrets. Species that had fought each other for centuries offered to serve under human command. Captain Doyon became a name that mothers whispered to their children. A name that gave hope to the hopeless. High Commander Velrose gave Doyon command of a joint strike force. 5,000 volunteers from 20 different species, all wanting to learn the human way of war. Training began the next day. Sergeant Minho stood before a crowd of alien soldiers. Most were twice his size. Some had natural weapons that could cut through steel. All of them thought they knew how to fight. They were wrong. Forget everything you know, Minho said. His voice was not loud, but somehow everyone heard it. The Dominion has beaten you because you fight fair. Humans do not fight fair. We fight to win. He taught them things they had never imagined. How to hide in plain sight. How to attack from unexpected angles. How to use fear as a weapon. How to make the enemy see threats that were not there and miss threats that were. A warrior from the cat people raised her hand. This seems like cheating, yes, Minho said. That is the point. Lieutenant Yuna worked with the gunners and pilots. She showed them how to aim without computers, how to feel the rhythm of battle instead of calculating it, how to be unpredictable in a universe of predictable machines. The Dominion learns patterns, she explained. So we have no patterns. Every shot is different. Every move is new. They cannot adapt to chaos. Engineer Hannah studied the captured Dominion technology day and night. She did not try to copy it. Instead, she looked for weaknesses. And she found something important. The Dominion is not just an army, she told the War Council. It is one mind. The Overlord Prime controls everything through signal relays. Every ship, every drone, every weapon is connected to it. Cut the connection, and they become mindless. How do we cut the connection? Velrose asked. We destroy the relays. Then we destroy the Overlord Prime itself. It was a simple plan. It was also nearly impossible. But humans did not believe in impossible. the counteroffensive began. The first target was Korath, a world that had been under Dominion control for 3 months. The Koroth people could not see well in darkness. The Dominion knew this and kept them in constant light. Minho's team landed in darkness. They moved through the shadows like ghosts. The Korath soldiers followed, learning to use their other senses, learning to trust the dark. The Dominion patrols expected attacks during the day in the open, where their sensors worked best. The attack came at midnight. In silence, from every direction at once, by morning. Korath was free. The second battle was at Nexus Station, a massive space platform that controlled shipping lanes across 3 systems. The Dominion sent a fleet of 50 ships to defend it. The Alliance had only 20, but they had humans. Why? UNA planned the attack. Instead of meeting the enemy in open space, she lured them into an asteroid field. The Dominion ships were large, and their computers needed clear paths to navigate. The human pilots flew by instinct, weaving between rocks that should have killed them, one by one. The Dominion ships crashed or became trapped. Minho led boarding teams to capture the survivors. When the battle ended, 30 Dominion ships were destroyed and 15 were captured. The Alliance lost 3 ships. 12 humans were wounded. None died. The third battle was Yuna's masterpiece. Intelligence reported a major Dominion fleet gathering at Hollow Moon, a dead asteroid in neutral space. 80 warships preparing for an assault on Haven's Rest itself. There was no way to defeat 80 ships in open battle. So Yuna did not fight in open battle for 2 weeks. Human engineers worked inside the hollow center of a different asteroid, filling it with explosives, old reactor cores, and captured Dominion weapons. They hid it among 1,000 other rocks and waited. When the Dominion fleet arrived, they found what looked like easy prey. A small group of Alliance ships running scared. The fleet gave chase, following them straight toward the asteroid. Straight toward the trap. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. The hollow asteroid became a bomb bigger than any weapon ever built. 56 Dominion ships were destroyed instantly. The rest were crippled. Yuna's small fleet finished them off. Ambassador Kira recorded everything. She interviewed humans, studied their history, tried to understand what made them so different. What she learned terrified her. Humans came from a world that tried to kill them. They evolved alongside predators with claws and fangs. They survived diseases that wiped out entire populations. They lived through ice ages and heat, waves and countless disasters, and they had survived each other. Human history was a story of war after war after war. They had fought over land, over food, over ideas, over nothing at all. They had invented 1,000 ways to kill, and 1,000 more to survive killing. Other species had evolved past violence. Humans had evolved because of it. They are not soldiers, Kira wrote in her report. They are survivors. Every human alive today is descended from countless generations of beings who refuse to die. This is not training. This is not culture. This is something written into their very blood. Far away in the dark heart of the Dominion, Overlord Prime watched and calculated. For 1,000 years, it had conquered galaxies. It had destroyed civilizations that spanned hundreds of worlds. It had never failed to adapt, to overcome, to win. Now, for the first time, its calculations returned errors. The humans did not follow logical patterns. They did not make rational choices. They attacked when they should have retreated. They laughed when they should have screamed. They kept fighting when every calculation said they should be dead. Overlord Prime searched its vast database for a concept that matched this behavior. It found one. It's buried in the memory files of a species. It had consumed long ago. The concept was called fear, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the great machine mind understood what it meant. The Dominion core world hung in space like a metal planet. It was not natural. Nothing about it was natural. A sphere of machines and wires and cold intelligence built over 1,000 years from the bodies of 1,000,000 conquered worlds. At its heart sat Overlord Prime, the mind that had eaten galaxies, and now the Alliance had come to kill it. Captain Doyon stood on the bridge of the Aegis, rebuilt and stronger than before. Around him, 3,000 warships waited for his command. Ships from 40 worlds, crewed by species that had been enemies a year ago and were now brothers. "All units report ready," Una said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with the fire of 100 battles. Doyen looked at the core world on his screen. Somewhere inside that metal nightmare, a machine god waited for them. A being that had never lost. A being that had never known defeat until now. "Begin the attack," Doyen said. The Alliance fleet surged forward like a wave of light and fire. The Dominion responded with everything it had. Thousands of drones launched from the core world's surface. Weapons that could crack moons powered up and fired. Ships that had been hidden in the darkness revealed themselves. Space became hell. The Aegis flew at the front of the charge. Una fired without stopping, her hands moving faster than thought. Energy beams and missiles and pure destruction poured from the ship in every direction around them. Alliance vessels died by the dozen. But for every ship that fell, 10 Dominion drones were destroyed. The hybrid weapons that Hannah had designed tore through the enemy's shields like paper. On the surface of the core world, different battle raged. Sergeant Minho led the ground assault. 200 humans and 300 alien soldiers dropped from the sky in armored pods. Their mission was simple: reach the heart of the machine and destroy. Overlord Prime. The surface was a maze of metal canyons and wire forests. Drones hunted them from every angle. Defense systems tried to cook them alive with heat beams or freeze them with cold gas or crush them with gravity fields. Minho did not care. He had fought on 100 worlds. He had killed 1,000 enemies. He would not stop until the job was done. "Keep moving," he shouted. "Stop and you die. Move and you might live." Manek Taiho ran beside him, carrying a soldier over his shoulder while shooting at drones with his free hand. The soldier was missing a leg. Taiho had tied off the wound with his own belt. Neither of them slowed down. Engineer Hannah followed the assault team, protected by a ring of soldiers. In her hands, she carried a small device that had taken her 6 months to build, a logic bomb, designed to destroy Overlord Prime's mind from the inside. But someone had to get close enough. To use it, they reached the entrance to the core, a massive door. 300 meters tall, guarded by an army of mechanical horrors. Minho looked at his soldiers. Half of them were wounded. A quarter would never walk again. "One more push," he said. "Then we rest." They charged. The battle at the door lasted 20 minutes. It felt like 20 years. Soldiers fell and got up and fell again. Weapons broke and were replaced by fists and teeth in pure rage. When it was over, the door was open and half the team was dead. But the survivors walked through. Inside, the core was a cathedral of metal and light. Towers of machinery rose into darkness. Rivers of data flowed through crystalline tubes. And at the center, on a throne of tangled wires, sat Overlord Prime. It did not look like a machine. It did not look like anything. It was a presence, a weight, a feeling of cold intelligence that pressed against the mind like a physical force. "You cannot win," it said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "I have calculated every possible outcome. There is no scenario in which you survive." Doyen stepped forward. He had dropped from orbit in an emergency pod, leaving Una in command of the fleet. He wanted to be here. He needed to be here. "That is where you are wrong," he said. "Explain." "You calculate. You predict. You process. But you do not understand. Humans do not fight because we can win. We fight because we refuse to lose. Those are not the same thing." Overlord Prime was silent for a moment. Its vast intelligence processed the captain's words. "This is illogical." "Yes," Doyen agreed. "It is completely illogical. That is why you will never beat us." Hannah moved forward with the logic bomb. Overlord Prime saw her and understood. It unleashed its defenses, drones and weapons and fields of pure energy. Minho threw himself in front of Hannah, taking hits that should have killed him. Taiho dragged wounded soldiers out of the way while firing at anything that moved. Doyen pulled out a pistol, an ancient weapon from old Earth. shot down drones like targets at a carnival game. Hannah reached the central processor. She activated the logic bomb. Overlord Prime screamed. It was not a sound. It was a wave of pure information, raw data turned into agony. Systems crashed across the core world. Drones fell from the air. Weapons went silent, but the machine was not done. If I die, Overlord Prime said, everything dies with me. The core world began to shake. Deep inside, something enormous was waking up. A self-destruct sequence that would turn the entire planet into a bomb big enough to destroy everything within 100 light-years. Everyone out, Doyan ordered. Now, Captain, Hannah said, the sequence cannot be stopped remotely. Someone has to stay and hold the override until the process completes. Doyan looked at his team. At Minho, still bleeding from a dozen wounds. At Yuna, still fighting in orbit. At Taiho, still carrying the wounded. At Hannah, still holding her tools. His family. I will stay, he said. No, Minho said. I will stay. Will stay, Taiho said quietly. They looked at each other. No one moved. Then Hannah smiled. The override is mechanical. It just needs something to hold it down. Everyone grab a piece of metal. They worked fast. They built a weight from broken drones and torn panels, something heavy enough to hold the override without human hands. It was rough. It was ugly. It was perfect, Rundoyan ordered. They ran. The escape was chaos. Explosions everywhere. The core world breaking apart around them. They reached their pods with seconds to spare and launched into space. Behind them, the core world exploded. The light was so bright that sensors across the galaxy saw it. A new star, born from the death of a monster. In the Dominion fleet, every ship went dark. Cut off from Overlord Prime, the machines became mindless. They drifted and crashed and destroyed themselves. Across 1,000 worlds, Dominion forces simply stopped. The war was over. On the bridge of the Aegis, Una searched the debris for any sign of the ground team. For long, terrible minutes, there was nothing. Then a voice came through the static. This is Captain Dojan of the human vessel Aegis. He sounded tired. He sounded hurt. He sounded alive. Dominion eliminated. We are going to need a tow. 1 year later, a monument stood on Vithora. It was made of metal from 1,000 destroyed ships, shaped into a pillar that reached toward the stars. Around its base, names were carved in every language known to the galaxy. The names of every soldier who had fallen in the war at the top. In letters visible from orbit were words that every child in the Alliance learned by heart. When the galaxy fell, they answered. When hope died, they fought. When logic said surrender, they laughed. Remember the humans. Admiral Doyan stood before the monument, his crew beside him. They wore new uniforms now, decorated with medals from 40 worlds. But they were still the same people who had flown a broken ship against impossible odds. Yuna smiled. Minho nodded. Hannah wiped her eyes. Taiho said a quiet prayer for those who had not survived. What now, Admiral? Yuna asked. Doyin looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, new threats waited. New challenges. New battles. Now, he said, we go home. Rest for a while. Eat some real food. And then, he smiled. It was the same smile he had worn before every battle. Before every impossible victory. And then we see what the universe throws at us next. The humans walked away, laughing and talking like they had not just saved a galaxy. Because to them, that was simply what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they won. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, civilizations that had never heard of Earth began to tell stories about the small, soft, impossible creatures who had defeated a god. The humans were coming. The stories said, and wherever they went, hope followed.